finest moment, but it sounds like we're both
that's funny because I'm at a dentist in Mexico.
Why?
Because I don't know, I'm trying out this new thing that people do in America.
Is it the vampire teeth?
What?
Is it vampire teeth?
No. Okay. Thing here.
Yeah. Or my friends who live in Brazil got vampire, like doctors in Brazil and stuff will give you vampire teeth. Never mind.
No, I'm literally just like I just really just fancied coming here, and then I thought, oh, while I'm here, I'm going to be a good old American and get all my like medical stuff sorted out, because I don't know, I feel really like I just felt a bit bored, fancied a challenge. So now I can talk about these issues. So I went to the dentist and it cost me like $50. And then if you go to one in Beverly Hills, it's like a lot more expensive.
$600 or something. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, so it was just really interesting to see the quality and like doing both, and it just helps me keep on top of what is going on economically and, you know, quality and standard of living and those kind of things. So I can speak from experience, you know.
I think that's actually a really good idea. I mean, because I was gonna say I'm from Canada, so like it was very shocking to me when I first came to the US, and like you go to the doctor and it's really expensive, or you go to the dentist, like because like we're just used to, you know, even college being like cheap-ish. But you're from the UK, right?
Yes, all this is supposed to be free in England, but obviously I ever since I've been working and I can afford it, I've never used the NHS, but not because I don't like the NHS, it's because I feel like if I have the privilege to pay for something, then I would, and allow that space for people that need it, you know?
Yeah,
and
true.
But in the last few years, everything's been going up and it's been crazy. But also sometimes I feel like, you know, you lose track of like quality, and you begin to think that you can only acquire it when you have tons of money, you know, and so that everything becomes about that. And I think it's sometimes I like going to see if you can still, you know, whether that is a thing, that sort of the concept where you get sort of comfortable with convenience, and you begin to think that you need tons of money in order to have better service, you know.
Well, I also think there's like another thing that happens is that like the American system, and I think the Canadian system too, I can't speak to Britain or the UK, like when people come from other countries with medical degrees and stuff, you have to like redo them, like unless it's like, I think there's some countries where they allow people to bring their degree in, but it's like I know a lot of people, or like my friends' parents, who are like, you know, doctors in the Soviet Union or something, and then have to like, or engineers or something, and have to come completely, like, we don't trust other countries to be, you know, good at medical or good at engineering, and so then people have to completely dismantle their lives if they want to come to the States or something. Like the, you know, like the inverse issue with that is also kind of a thing, because also think about how many more doctors and stuff we could have if we let people bring their degrees into our country as well. Like the lines, the waiting and everything wouldn't be such a problem, because, you know, speaking of like bypassing the NHS or whatever, like
I didn't know that was the case, but yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, really?
This is like doing your driving license or something. But I was thinking about, because my dad wrote a book about this sort of thing, and it's also, you know, because it's very like he wrote this thing about how it is very, I'm sure that Mexico is seen in this way too, where everyone aspires to come and work abroad, right?
Yeah.
And what he was saying is say when a company becomes super powerful, like for example Google, they have the facility to buy ideas from other countries that are good, right, that don't have, for example, like Mexico doesn't have the infrastructure to support its doctors and pay them what they need to be paid. So what they would do is, you know, pay them what they can afford, and then the doctors are like, well, fuck this, I might as well go and work in Beverly Hills, you know, where I'm going to be paid more money. And so there is that aspect to it as well, where so there's a brain drain from all of these countries, you know, in third world countries, just because their quality of work is not respected and paid with the same value as a doctor or a dentist or someone, you know, in the West. So that happens also because naturally we have a system where one company does get a lot richer than a, you know,
Yeah,
government even. And so yeah, so like even like governments, say for example the Mexican government would not be able to sustain a healthy number of doctors in their own country because everyone's incentivized to leave and work abroad and get better money. And that's also a thing I feel like that we're talking about. It's really interesting already. I'm like, yeah, the dilemmas of this world. It's like, yeah,
like, yeah, no, to answer that, I was literally just doing tons of research in like the reserve currency, and like the US dollar is kind of like the reserve currency. And I saw on the list of topics that were like supposed to or like allowed to talk about, like crypto was one of the things. And you know, like speaking of this issue, like you know, I was noticing like with like the warmongering kind of happening right now, like the US dollar is becoming a lot more valuable because like in times of war, people start buying US dollars because it's essentially the reserve currency, and how this just inherently fucks every other country. Like our stupid warmongering is just like making our dollar inflated and like basically just
can't believe the dollar is like the same as the pound right now. It's kind of crazy. Or it's the same as the euro, nearly the same as a pound. Because it's true, but even the dollar being the reserve currency is it's fought and won. You know, it wasn't the natural choice, and this is kind of why this is, I guess.
I feel like it creates a lot of chaos, and it also like, I feel like it really pits like the East versus the West too. Like I feel like everybody coming together and settling on like an abstract currency as the reserve currency like would be a better call. Like I just feel like it would inherently de-escalate a lot of things. And like I don't know, I keep thinking about like de-escalation right now because I feel like I was talking to my friend.
It used to be gold, didn't it? And that's kind of what Colonel Gaddafi was trying to do. But then the last big war for NATO was that, and they put the dollar in as the main currency. And then we have another NATO war, which is going to solidify the dollar as a strong currency right now, which is what's happening, you know. But I don't know, like this is basically the old system, and the conversation I wanted to have is the challenge between, so you had gold, which is a material, and I never knew this about gold, but apparently what we have is just all what we have. Like it's not like you can create gold, and it's made up of like stars clashing and in a dusted supernova or something. And we only have apparently like 3 swimming pools worth of gold on Earth. And obviously the US has most of it. And so even if it went into gold at this point, it would still put US in a certain position because they have most of the currency, even in gold. So So you've got minerals as a currency, and then you have paper and cash as currency. And now we're looking at some sort of other type of ether, you know, with cryptocurrency. And I think that all three is important, you know, and for me, ideally, I'd like to see a way that all three of these can be a mode of currency in the future, and that we don't have to go completely extremely towards one, you know,
Yeah.
or the other. And I say this because, say, for example, I'm doing this interview in Mexico, and I'm sure that majority of the population here operate with cash, you know, and they when you're below the poverty line, you tend to be people that turn up to markets and pay in cash. And you know, it's a grandma that puts a dollar bill in a bra and goes off to the fish market or whatever. And like, everything is, they don't really have you know, a cryptocurrency wallet. And I don't know how someone like that will adapt to something so quickly, you know, when they already have this sort of, I don't know, hand to mouth existence. And so much of money is exchanged in those kind of circumstances that you would really just like pull out the stops on more than 50% of the global population by eradicating cash.
I mean,
And
sorry, go. I'll
yeah,
let you finish first.
well, I was just saying, if we switched them to a digital existence and gave them phones and a crypto wallet to go and buy a pound of potatoes at the market, I feel like then we have to think about the repercussions of the environmental aspect of having such a digital future, you know. And this is another question that conversation that me and you, because we've both done the whole NFT thing, we can talk about. But this is the bit where I get really confused, because I'm like, okay, so if we turn 50% or that 60% of people that are kind of earning like $1 a day onto phones and existing with cryptocurrency, then where do we store all that information? You know, like, for every one of those wallets that has to be stored on a thing under the sea somewhere, or wherever we're going to stick it in a volcano, I don't know, but that has to exist. And all of the infrastructure and the computing power has to exist to maintain this. And, you know, so like, to me, I feel like this is why I think all three are important, you know.
I agree and disagree. I mean, what I do think is that like, we're not kind of, I feel like everything that's done with regards to cultural change or charity, or like trying to like fix like you know, improve people's lot in life and stuff, like, everyone is so risk averse that we're not just trying to do like big crazy moves, like, for example, just provide everyone on earth with a phone or something, you know. Like, it's like, no, just no one ever suggests doing anything like that. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, why can't we make, like, if you just like sat in a room for 20 minutes and you thought of like how to like fix earth, like, there are just like, you could just do something like that. And like, you know, when you look at like I don't know, I think there's a lot of issues with digital life, like, and I think there's a lot of stuff we need to sort out from like an addiction perspective, like addiction to phones, and like like some of the mental health outcomes that are negative because of that, and like reduce, you know, kids playing outside less and stuff. But on the other hand, like, when I look at the sort of like educational disparities globally, and then you see like what kids can do when they have access to the internet, and like what they can learn, and like I have a like a two and a half year right now, so I've been doing a lot of research into education, and it's like there's so many online resources for education, and like, I'm just like, man, you know, a generation or two, we could just give everyone on earth equal access to like the best education available if we just could get everyone a phone and like access to these tools, and like think about how much that would change people's ability to like control their existence and make sure it's, you know, as good as it can be, or, you know, empower women to be in, like, you know, get like in safer situations and stuff. And so like, I don't know, like I guess my like counter to that would be that I just think we should just give everyone a fucking phone or a computer. Like we should just like find a way to fund that, because there's, if you look at like the amount of money that's been acquired by like effective altruism, or that is acquired every year by like charitable organizations, like that is a fundable thing. So I don't know, but that's like also, there's probably so many issues with that I'm like not foreseeing, because I just like thought about that in this moment.
Well, one of the issues would be that if everybody got on the phone and everybody was, because this is, you know, the electricity, and then the material to make the phone, who makes the phone, how we make the phone, how we store the data that we're constantly creating on the phone as well.
But the thing is,
Because
we have,
this is the other thing, we have a society, like, this is very optimistic of you, and also this might be way too complex for Paper Magazine, which is more like fashion focused, because we're trying to solve the world. And it's like, we're like, okay, but let's try to do this on paper. So we're discussing the value of paper versus digital currency and phones, and you know, when I started my career, I should say, is I started with a pen and paper. I did, you know, I wrote my lyrics in a notepad, and I had pens and pencils, and I was very excited about pen designs and pencil designs, and, you know, going to Japan, that was like the highlight, is to go shop for, you know, tape and some nice pens. And this is how I started. And now, you know, it's like I have the option of writing my lyrics in a phone and making my beats on a phone or computer, you know, and I feel like I have changed my tools, but my method is the same, you know, and my thoughts are the same, and the way I want to hear something is the same, but the tool is different. And this is sort of, it's kind of an interesting conversation for me, because sometimes you do give, I've been places where I've given people exactly that, you know, where you go, all right, I'm just going to give these 10 people exactly what I have to create, you know, which is, here's a laptop, here's some programs, here's a camera, here's a phone, you know, and then you leave them and you say, right, now they're going to be like me. They'll be able to dig themselves out of wherever they are and create whatever and express themselves or do something, or learn, like you said, download a whole university program and get a degree, which you can actually do, which is amazing. And but some people just don't do that, you know. I've to trace back the life of these laptops, some of them have ended up in swimming pools, some of them have been sold, some of them got pawned, some of them got, you know, stolen. So depending on who you give it to as well, some people don't value something like that. And, you know, it's not just that everybody gets the same tools. Like you said, it's also simultaneously developing people that also find the motivation or find the inspiration and find the, you know, the thing. And the problem I find with culture sometimes is that we all want to do the same thing, and sometimes necessarily that's just not, that might not be the answer. And, you know, I find that
yeah, no, I
is a careful thing, you know, you have to be kind of careful with that,
was actually
just
thinking
by
about that.
experience.
No, I super agree, and I was actually thinking about that recently. Like I saw this like essay on the internet about how like the monocultureness of now is this like kind of is getting like really toxic, and like I think I kind of agree. And I think
Yeah,
if you,
I
like,
do too.
Yeah, like if you even notice, like they were showing like all the logos of all the big like film companies like Warner Brothers and stuff, like, and they used to, in like the 30s and 40s and stuff, they had like these like ornate, everyone had like really a different brand and a different style, and like there's more plurality of like style and vision. And it's like, as we enter into modernity, like you go into everyone's home and everyone's home is like all IKEA and like all kind of like the same, and like there's just this like sameness, you know, and like suburbia, and like all the logos of all the big film companies are now like super simple minimalist design. And like, you know, there's a lot of beauty to minimalist design, but there's this weird like
Uniform.
that's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's like taking over. And it's like, you know, like if you go to like, I mean, you've spent a lot more time in Europe and stuff than me. Like I've always like been in Canada or America, so like I've always just lived in like the sameness realm my whole life. But like, you know, like Italy versus like I don't know, just like every country has like its own vibe. Like when you look at, when you go to countries that are
Yeah.
really old, and like that is definitely just like, it's like a marked difference. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like it's quite tragic, and I think it like disables people, because when there's more plurality, I think there's room for more different types of brains and different types of thinking. And right now it's like, to succeed in the current environment, you have to be able to function in the current environment under its like regimented, like accepted you know, ideas and philosophies and art styles and stuff.
This is why I try to stay as weird as possible, but weird even in a like not weird sense right now, because of this, you know, like it's like, I don't know, on a larger level, 10 years ago, not when 10 years ago, but when I was making the Kala album, and I was thinking, oh, and I was in India, and I was thinking, because I read this article in a newspaper where they said that India had bought the handbook of how to make a Starbucks kind of vibes, you know, and that they're really excited about it, and they're going to make Starbucks all over the place in India. And I was like, oh wow, like now that say a place in America would be really kind of, you know, we're making like chai lattes. India, meanwhile, is going to adopt like this whole Starbucks philosophy, you know, and they were saying, yeah, and then there's 1 billion people in China who's going to want to do the same thing as well. So there's just going to be everywhere. People are going to be drinking coffee all of a sudden. And I was like, wow, that's kind of incredible. If you apply that to every single item that we say, this is the thing you got to have in order to be acceptable. And everybody globally wants it at the same time, because now we live in a time where you just hit a button and it goes out globally, because everything is a global brand. This is the problem, and this is why there's a drain on resources, you know. So while you have simultaneously a population expanding, and then the resources are depleting, our want is all the same. So this kind of brings me to the spiritual aspect, right? Because spiritually, the only way I can sort of like the optimism and the want I have for everybody to be equal, and everyone to want the same level of standard of living and a good life and dignity, and be able to do that. I want that. But sometimes I feel that given all of the tools to every single human on the planet, not everyone will yield the same outcome. Like, it's silly to think that, because even in my family, you know, or any family, you have all the siblings and not all of them turn out exactly the same, even though they do have the same upbringing, you know. So in a larger sense, giving everyone exactly the same tools doesn't necessarily create exactly the same person, but we are told to be the same person and to want the same things and to look good and do this and achieve that and blah, blah, blah. And I think that means that there's going to be a level of, you know, resources that's going to take to keep that going. And this is where you've got the problem of the time we're living through now, you know, where we've got the clash of this population versus production issue. And spiritually, I feel like the only way to kind of really understand it is probably through like the idea of Hinduism, where you think, okay, some people are just born a certain way and some people are born a certain other way, and that's all dependent on something larger, you know, than just the environment, and that the cycle could be longer than what we're seeing. And then that would kind of explain it in a spiritual sense. But at the same time, when we're talking about how the dollar is strong and why these countries, certain countries, can't get up out of poverty, is because of certain things that they've gone through in the past with the clash of the dollar, you know, and how the dollar became the strongest. This adds to, you know, some of the problems that we've got, you know, and that has to be fixed first in order to then achieve, like, this is, I don't know, I'm just thinking out where I want to be at peace with it and be like, well, this is how the world is with this chaos, you know, because this is how Hindus explain the world. They're like, the chaos is meant to be chaos, and you're born in this chaos and then you work yourself through it. And some people do it in one lifetime, some people don't, and they keep coming back to do it. And then with Christianity, I feel like it sort of looks at it head on and says, no, there's just like good and bad in this world, and that's why there's inequality and crazy, you know, some people have crazy opportunities and some people don't. And it's sort of written up as lack of compassion, and you have to have more compassion in the world to achieve equality, you know. And and yes, you're right. And on the other hand, loads of people's argument against Christianity is that they went as missionaries to all of these countries and broke these countries and, you know, got them primed for colonization. And so the work of Christianity went hand in hand with colonization, you know. And I don't know, I think this is spiritually, it's all, to me, it's like a very interesting situation that
okay,
I don't see how we solve it, you know.
I have thoughts of how to solve it, but they could be really wrong. But I suspect, or like the thesis I've been like coming to over time, is that I think the things that we need to do to overcome our problems are technological, but that includes both like, you know, literal technology, but also social technology, which is something that I think we disregard too often in our culture. And when I say social technology, I think religion is part of, like, religion is a social technology. It's like a thing people use to essentially fill in for mental health before we had concepts of mental health. And I still think religion functions better than the mental health system most of the time. And, you know, a part of our issue is we haven't been updating our social technologies. We haven't been updating our religions or making new religions that are like adequate and like make sense with the time. And then from like a pure, don't make sense with now. Like most religions feel somewhat mythological or fantastical in the current cultural landscape, even if they contain like really good teaching and stuff. And like, I'm not sure exactly how to solve that, but like that's like one of the things I keep thinking about. But to speak about like resources and technology, we have solutions to all these problems. We are just not implementing them. Like, you know, we have carbon capture, we have remineralization of soil. And like, in fact, we can do those things at the same time if everybody started composting and we started enriching soil and like putting our waste into compost and like being, taking more care. There's ways to take care of our earth that solve our problems, that can like allow for radical abundance. And while I don't think we can have equality of outcome between people, like I do think something that is achievable is equality of opportunity. Like, I do think we could get to a situation on this planet where like anyone who wants to can thrive. Like, maybe not everyone will thrive.
But see, this is where I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree that we have everything. We have the ideas we need, and we have the resources we need. We have the money we need, and we have the people we need. Like, we're suffering from overpopulation. Like, is that true? And if so, then we have enough manpower to change whatever we want. And I think the all women power, like, what, I don't even know how to get into those kind of areas right now, because obviously we're talking about the fundamentals. And for me, like, having been in LA for the last 6 months, I feel like it's a place, you know, during the time of COVID and everything, where a lot of people, like, for example, you know, there is some sort of I don't know if it's just specific to LA, but it feels like everything's been maxed out. You know, the ideas have been maxed out, the lifestyle's been maxed out, the money has been, like, everything costs so much money to exist in this very sort of this lifestyle, which is very curated, and it's very carefully, you know, carefully made, but at the same time it cannot be changed or molded to become more environmentally conscious. Like, everything has been monetized and exhausted in the way that it's constructed, that how would you just,
so
you know,
a baseline
how would you unravel that without unraveling the industry of what it is, you know, like what it's become? And maybe America as a whole is like that, because I also don't see that in, you know, maybe in upstate New York or whatever. But if you go to New York, I also go, how do you change that? Because, for example, it's a city, when I go there and stay in a hotel, every rooftop in New York City should be a vegetable garden right now.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just not. They're still sticking up, you know, like,
I mean, I think a big
on top of these roofs instead of putting nature. And that is an ideological thing that is just through and through in every town, every city, you know.
I do, to counter
Yeah.
that, I do think so. For example, like, there's a lot of mini, like nuclear power startups being developed, and there's all kinds of power startups being developed. Like, I think what we need to do is rely less on the government and allow individual companies to start creating the tools we need to, like, power our lives in an environmental.
I 100% agree with you. Like, I'm a full supporter of that, and support any independent thinkers and companies, and, you know, anyone who's sort of got the motivation to see a vision and follow it through. But the problem is, say a company like Google that becomes the government, you know, how do you then monitor, like, how do you sort of maintain their value system or ethics, that they don't become politicized and become the government? And that's the problem we're living through now, when tech giants have become, you know, they have become the shapers of this situation that we're seeing, where, you know, they can take the position like, we're right, this is the way to do it, and then we're just going to, like, shut everything else down. And this is,
yeah, this is the quandary, is like, how do you then not get, you know, East India Company equivalents in the modern day? You know, like,
exactly.
Like, how do you prevent that? That's like, I think that is ultimately the heart of the question, because I think everything is solvable besides what do you do with when you create a superpower that wasn't chosen by the people, you know. Like, that's kind of the ultimate question, I guess, which is, I have, like, yeah. I don't know what the answer to that is, but that's like, I think if that question can be solved, that's sort of like what is required. That's the thing between us and like,
yeah, because at the end of the day, I feel like as an artist, this is the type of things that I've been censored for, you know, like say 15 years ago or 12 years ago or 10 years ago, if I was talking about, look, one company should not become the government, you know, two, like not all of us need to be transformed into product pushing humans or consumers. And, you know, I think an element of that is good, and having necessities is good, and being able to purchase things to fulfill those necessities is good too. And, you know, one of the things, the positives of COVID era is that we are learning to live within our means, or be conscious of like, what do we really need, and, you know, and how things are made and produced and distributed, etc. Like we're because of the problems that's arising, everyone's sort of having moments to think about these individual kind of points. But it's to raise that question, I feel like as an artist, I was really punished by the media, you know,
yeah,
and even supporting something like WikiLeaks, which did more than just talk about politics. It talked about the role of corporations and how politics had no idea how powerful the corporations were becoming, you know, and politics was signing off on all this lobbying that was happening, which would put humans in a fucked up position 10 years from now. And then bingo, we're there now, you know, we're there now where corporations are bigger than governments, and governments have to do what they get told to do. And even though the COVID thing sort of threatened that and questioned.
well, I'm worried
Yeah.
COVID just destroyed everyone's faith in institutions, which there wasn't much reason to have faith. You know, our institutions had become so corrupted, like both on the corporate side and on the government side, that like it's not like having faith in them was like a great thing. But like what I'm worried about is that like the loss of faith in the ability, or like at least the aspiration for them to be great, is making them all worse. And like I also think I was always shocked at the degree to which you got punished for that shit. And I like always thought you were really smart. And you know, I hope, it's like sort of validating but sort of tragic to see a lot of that stuff come true. And you know, to speak on like lobbying, like I just feel like it's so negative both ways, because like the other thing is it encourage, like it benefits like the rich companies, or it benefits like the things that are already institutions of power, because it's so expensive that like it's like, if you're not a person who can lobby, or if you're not a person who wants to lobby, like if you're making a company, let's say you're making like a nuclear power startup, and you don't have the funds, or you don't want to exist in that system, then like you're inherently at a disadvantage, and you inherently cannot, you know, work to undermine the system, because you basically have to support a super corrupt system if you want to, like, you know, function like it, in a way that, you know, can, I guess, undermine it, which I guess, you know, the system is doing that on purpose to prevent, you know, they want to keep oil as like they want to keep oil in power, the oil hegemony or whatever. And it's just like, I don't know. Yeah. Cause like lobbying, it keeps our worst people in power.
Somebody was saying, oh, we should just, if you get rid of lobbyists, then the world would change.
I think I literally think that is one of the biggest problems I possibly are. Like I feel so strongly about.
Yeah,
like,
and instinctively, not even just like intellectually or whatever, but instinctively that feels like a right thing, because, you know, even the whole plastic situation, it's the guy who owned the media lobbied to own plastic, and then he brought plastic to the world. And even though there were some positives with plastic, within 50 years, the problems peaked, you know. So whoever's doing the lobbying now, the problems of what they will create will peak in probably less than 50 years. And it would just, you know, and I feel like we've got more people lobbying now than ever, and more people just, I don't know, the way it's sort of rigged the whole planet in this weird gridlock of a thing, you know. And I think that's, yeah, if you get rid of the lobbying, but get rid of faith in institutions and politicians, get rid of the lobbying, and then free education and give access to whoever wants it. And I think this is the other thing. It's like, not, maybe there's another way of doing it, and you create new institutions, but I don't want to call them institution. There's a new name for it, maybe, where it's like, if you go to a village in Cambodia, it's not that you have to buy every single kid a phone, right? But you can maybe put technology in one collective place, so you limit everybody's exposure to technology, because like we said before, you know, the effects of mental health, and it does other things, you know. Phones do like other things that we didn't know was going to cause a lot of societal issues. So if you had a collective place, just like a community place, where you put all your technology in there, and then invite everybody who wants to have that education and that opportunity to come there and use the stuff, you know. And you build some sort of, yeah, and you build some sort of system where everyone gets the same sort of chance to spend the same sort of time with the same sort of machines. And then, you know, then they also get to go off and work on the farm and tend to their grandma and do the thing, and, you know, whatever, and be normal people at the same time, you know.
Yeah, it is a drug. Like, screens are a drug, and like I think that's a really strong idea. I think having sort of imposed limits is super smart. I'm not 100% sure if this is true, because like I don't live there and I don't know anyone there, but like I read that China only allows, like, you have an hour of video games per day and you have an hour of social media per day.
Yeah, or you go to jail.
Yeah, well, I mean, but like there's probably a way where it can like shut off, you know. And like, I mean, I'm sure like some people would be able to bypass that, but also if you're smart enough to figure out how to bypass something like that, then you probably deserve to have unlimited screen time. I don't know, but like I think like, yeah, some sort of like imposed limit like that, having to like travel from your home to a place would be like just super.
Yeah, because when I was in Indonesia, that was one of the problems they were facing, is that in cultures where talent and knowledge is passed down generation to generation through other means, and trade is taught from like family generation to generation, they found that soon as the phones were introduced, the new generation who had the phones stopped learning trade, and they stopped learning information from their grandparents. They stopped like transferring all of this ancient stuff, you know, through the community, like that's the only way they know how. And so it created a massive disconnect between the older generation and the new generation. And you can be like, oh yeah, that's because, you know, blah, 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 all of their stuff is dated, but it's not. It's just some of the things that are valuable that you can pass down from generation to generation and have been in a community for thousands of years is suddenly lost. And for the first time, you know, you've got a generation of kids who don't know how to, you know, chisel a freaking waterfall out of a piece of rock in you know,
Yeah.
in with like ancient knowledge. And I just feel like that was very sad to learn, and we created that because of the phone. And actually, if a kid knew trade where he was just chiseling you know, these incredible godlike water features for somebody's garden, I think that it's actually not a bad trade. You know, that's actually quite a nice, kind trade to whatever his existence, and it's not creating tons of carbon footprint, and it's not like infringing, and it's quite a good meditation for your mental health to create art and actually make sculptures that are very like precise and specific, and also meditating on like your idea of a god. Or, you know, I know that having idols is not a good thing, but in their culture that's like part of their meditation, to be able to carve
I
a
don't
thing,
think it's
you know.
inherently, I've been thinking about this lately, that I don't think it's inherently a bad thing. It's just, it's been so perverted so many times. But like, I feel like we could come to like a better religious consensus where we could have religion that isn't so like othering or brutal, or like, you know, like I keep thinking that one of the reasons people keep gravitating so much towards astrology is because it provides like a spiritual religious experience, like without judgment or something. And like, I don't know. Also, yeah, to go back to like the phone thing,
Yeah,
I
but
feel,
that's, I think with religion and spirituality, you just have to kind of ignore the actual, you know, there's like layers of it, and you have to ignore where something comes from, because I find that every 2000 years or something, you know, you get another prophet or another thing that comes down to earth, like a spirit, or, you know, the son of God himself, or whichever way, whichever culture, they have their own interpretation of it. And I think depending on how you say understand Buddhism, Hinduism, or Christianity, or any type of religion, based on the community it comes from, it's been written to suit their time and their need and their identity at that time. You know, I think that Christianity, like, if you bypass like the names of these religions and the figures and the visuals and the fantastical nature of stuff, and if you strip it back to the basic core things, you know, Christianity talks about certain values and virtues, and so does Hinduism, and so does Buddhism, but each one is basically described it in a certain way. So Hinduism, what it does is it paints a picture to describe a concept. So the concept of, say, time and energy, which or destruction. Shiva represents destruction, or Kali, which represents time and like this fierceness. So they paint a picture to describe it. And whenever you're feeling like you're in that zone, that picture reminds you of where you're at, you know? And it's not necessarily specific to the picture, but it's the concept that at some point in the day-to-day, you're going to have to be fierce, or some point in the day-to-day, something fierce is going to happen to you to remind you something, you know?
yeah.
And the concept of fierce is what Kali is. So loads of people interpret it where they take something so literal, but it's not. And I think that's what the Christian thing is. It's like, if you have a concept of forgiveness or compassion or being saved in your most darkest, despairest time, then a figure, a picture of Jesus is there, or a cross is there. You'll see it somewhere, and then you're like, okay, it's not that means that I believe all of the stuff about when it was written 2000 years ago, you know, and all of the sort of way of life that was in Israel at the time, or that, you know, is really specific to that thing. That's not what I think of. I think, okay, that reminds you that it's okay to let things go, you know, be compassionate, forgive and think about something beyond right now, like something bigger than what your actual situation is right this moment, you know. and 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 Buddhism is also like that. It talks about like suffering and being able to let go of materialistic things and materialistic wants and the material world itself, and you know, and just like focus on achieving like this meditative peaceful state, you know. and and I don't think Buddha is a god, but
It's like a philosophy and sort of mental health analog.
exactly, if you, when you
Well,
see that symbol, I don't associate it to the culture, I associate it to the meaning of, say you see a Buddhist mandala somewhere, what that shows me is meditation, you know, that a monk trained for 20 years to be able to draw that circle freehand with no technology. And that just says discipline to me. And then you just think about the word discipline, you know, and you go, okay, like all of this noise in the world, you know, like there's ways around to that. And that's how it helps mental illness. And you're right, it could be, you know, very sort of taken literal, and then on the other hand cause even more destruction and death and war and all of these terrible things. But I think everyone has every aspect of every religion in them. This is my take.
I think that's kind of true. I was gonna ask, because I don't know much about Hinduism, and I'm sort of doing an experiment right now, where I'm being like a pagan polytheist. 'Cause I kind of have this theory that like before the rise of monotheism, society was a lot better, because I feel like if your religion has 100 gods and like practices ancestor worship, you know, like why would you judge other religions as much? And like I'm not saying like the old world was some sort of like, or the antiquity was some kind of paradise or something, but like it does feel that we have this like otheringness and like and tribalism in our culture, and maybe that was like always there, but I'm curious, like does Hinduism feel more accepting in general of like the other? Like is there do you feel like a meaningful difference, like based on your experience with
Yeah,
that?
I felt, because I you know, obviously when I did the M.I.A album, that's where I was at. And
Yeah.
I think what I learned, and at that time when I came back in 2013 and I was like, hey, I've done this, you know, and at that time people were like, wow, you made the weirdest, craziest album called M.I.A, like you gave your middle finger to the Super Bowl and then you fucked off, and then you came back making Bad Girls and talking about Matangi, a goddess, which is one of 10 goddesses called the Mahavidyas, you know, which is a very specific but complex thing to get your head around for normal society that was listening to your music on the dance floor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then came Hillary Clinton running for office, and it all became about female empowerment, and suddenly all the women were taken to the streets and there were protests everywhere, and you know, Madonna was like the one championing that. And but at the same time, that level of like acceptance for me as a woman wasn't given. You know, I was going through all the lawsuits, I was in a custody battle, I was going through all kinds of crazy shit as a woman, and I was doing it in a country that I wasn't very familiar with, you know, on my own. And at the same time being I felt attacked by governmental forces because I'd given support to WikiLeaks, you know, and then I had all the press against me, the elites against me, and then I had, obviously I was with Rock Nation and we fell out, and all of these things. And then suddenly that was all like brushed aside, and then everyone's like, yeah, empower women, let's go and like bomb all these other countries to empower women. And I was like, well, that is a weird you know, concept, but the only reason why Hinduism made sense is that it's so old and ancient that it had come up with the concept that a woman can be a musician. You know, Matangi was a musician. Can be a musician, can stick up for justice or freedom of speech, or truth or whatever. And the untouchables, which is underprivileged people and outcasts of society, that you don't always have to represent like this elite polished aesthetic, you know, to be an entertainer or a musician, which is something that I know that I can afford. I could go anywhere and clean myself up and present this Instagram image of myself, but I purposefully don't bother doing it because I think it's okay to just live within certain means and to really empower people to feel good in their skins, that we don't all need to feel the same pressure, you know, to live by standards of people who are very, very wealthy and, you know, like have millions of dollars to look good. And it cannot become that looking good is something that's achieved with money. You know, it's like some people just have it anyway. And I think that's like, you know, style, like you could be born with style. You can be born in a perfect body or in perfection, in a perfect spirit, in whatever perfect IQ, EQ, whatever the thing is, and just be fine with what that is. This is so not talking about Hinduism, but anyway, Hinduism to me gave me that chaos and acceptance, you know, where everything chaotic about you is fine, because
I guess that's
every chaos.
oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that it just basically says every chaotic aspect of a human being is all there, from their present actions, their past actions, their thoughts, their you know, their relationship with all the souls around them, now, previously, all of the chaos, you know, and even the chaos of the way of seeing the world, which is really, it just makes so much sense, is that even the creation and destruction. So in the Bhagavad Gita, which is their main book, it's a battle, it's a war scene between Krishna and Arjuna, and Arjuna has to fight on the battlefield, and he has to fight, and in the army that he's facing, he sees his cousins, his family members, his friends, like his guru even that taught him, you know, everybody was in this army that he had to basically kill. And he was like, I don't want to do it. So he drops the sword and he says, I don't want to fight this war. I might try to kill myself and die than to kill all of these people I know, you know. And Krishna, who's the god, who's the advisor, and he says, no, you have to go to war and you have to finish what you started, because even the war itself is made by God, you know, and it's all to do with like fulfilling the purpose. And this is the role that you were chosen to do, and you have to fulfill the purpose of this, otherwise you don't liberate your soul or everyone here who's turned up for this precise moment to witness this, you know. And so it's ultimately the most freeing thing, the complete acceptance and the complete understanding that even your own family, they're all individual souls, you know, and that there's no attachment to anything, and you fulfill the purpose. And within creation and all the beautiful thing that God represents, there's also chaos and destruction and decomposing, which then feeds again back into creation. So in that sense, everything is okay, you know, and to me, that's like,
I
yeah.
really, I really love that. I feel like that idea, that concept has been lost, especially in the West, like, because, you know, it's like we went from having, you know, like ancient Greece and ancient Egypt and these sort of like very plural cultures that like, and they just lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years. And like, it's like now we just have this like, it's almost like I feel like the rise of monotheism and even like the atheist post monotheist culture is so singular in what it will accept that it's like inherently self-defeating. And while I do agree with destruction and death on one perspective, I still think we can have that and we can accept that and we can like come to peace with that, which by the way, I also think people like really struggle to come to peace with death and loss because we've done a lot to try to erase it from the popular culture right
Well, I
now.
think in the West, definitely. I think that's why, you know, it really showed that, you know, in the COVID times, that
Yeah.
the most people who struggled with it and the concept of this was the West, because they have lost some sort of spiritual way to digest that information,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, definitely. And but at the same time though, what I was going to say is like I think if we really wanted to, we could overcome the concept of like dark ages. Like I feel like there's a sort of like resigned feeling everyone is having right now that we have to inherently plummet into like, you know, the fall of Rome. Like we have to like just have a mass societal collapse, and like that's like the only way forward. And like everyone's just sort of like I feel like everyone's already like grieving this before it's even happened, instead of like trying to find ways to like stop it from happening. And it might be that it has to happen, but I do think that's one thing that's taking over.
One of the things that I've forgotten, I can't believe I've forgotten his name, but I'm going to find the name and text it. But there was this guy who invented a school, right, in England, and it's called the Small School, and he's this sort of like Indian philosopher who invented this school where I think he only had like 9 kids in the beginning and then slowly grew. And then he employed the parents of the 9 kids to work as teachers. And then he would just like make the kids do washing up in the kitchen. And then he would like take them out into the garden. They would plant the vegetables that they grew and then they make lunch with it. And he was just teaching them from young to be conscious of everything and to be mindful of everything. And he made a really amazing point, which I completely agree with, which is, you know, if you look at most of the destruction in the world, it's done by people who've been to the best universities in the world, right? If you look at like the Ivy League colleges and Oxford and Cambridge, etc., those are the places that's churning out people that feel they're so smart that they have to just bulldoze through earth at everything.
I don't really quickly, I want to interject. I don't think the issue is education and like elite education. I think the issue is loss of moral. Like there's some sort of like we don't teach people to be good anymore. Like that's
exactly
not
okay.
A value.
So that the educational institution is important because when it's purely science driven or purely tech driven, purely money driven,
yeah,
they're only churning out human beings that are interested in, you know, in all of these, like, because now we live in a society where you have to have success blinders on and go like full fucking throttle, that unfortunately people are not critical thinkers as well. And also that now they've got the fear of speaking out because you get banned and shadow banned and you know, censored and all of that shit. So it's getting worse and worse, the idea of everyone wanting to be perfect and to be like this one person who's green, you know, I don't want to say, you know, whatever the social credit system thing is, where you've got 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 credit score thing. And everyone's sort of on this path that it's so going to be difficult to get everyone to think in a 360, like, mindful way of, like, you know, at the same time when you're doing this, think of the tree and think of the earth and think of the planet and think of, you know, your own cells and your, you know, the stars.
The problem is everyone's in fucking fight or flight because we need universal healthcare and we need housing. Like, people, there must be a social safety net, because you can't, like, enlighten everybody when people can't think about anything besides survival. Like, that's like, I feel like such the heart of the problem. Like, if you had, if people weren't, like, if people could live and not live in fear, it's like the fight or flight that keeps everyone, that perpetuates this, like, fear state and this, you know, this it's kind of like this weird, like, Reformation-esque, you know,
yeah,
like,
but if you think about, yeah, but like, if you take institutions, educational institutions, and they take shareholding money from the board or whatever the thing is, and then they've been told to only study a certain thing. Because when I looked at, like, MIT website, and I look at, say, under 30s who are, like, super successful at, like, winning this thing this year or whatever, if you look at the list of who MIT puts forward as, like, the best 30 people for the year, I look at it and it always blows my mind when I go, wow, like, 28 out of 30 people they've promoted as, like, our fucking future legends are all thinking about space, you know, or robotics. And only 2 out of 30 is looking at cleaning water, or, you know, yeah, bringing education to everybody on the planet, or bringing, like, energy or electricity, you know what I mean, like, fixing problems on Earth. Because
in MIT's defense, that's kind of what MIT is for. But, like, I think sort of the issue is more that we're not allowing for other institutions. Like, I really am against this, like, let's tear down the you know, that aspect of society. Like, I think that is the wrong approach to
no,
take.
I'm not saying tear it down. I'm just saying, if you're going to promote 30 human beings who are going to be ahead of the curb on putting together the freshest ideas for the future, I want those 30 human beings, especially when you're saying, like, under 30, so they're pretty young.
Yeah.
You know, and in the modern world, in the West, I'm sure that they're not very learned and experienced, you know, because especially now it's going to be tougher. Like, when I look at even the concept of like, I don't know how many American children have passports and travel everywhere, and, you know, really take in that knowledge, because that's also difficult. They're working so hard to streamline themselves into Ivy League colleges that they don't travel and they don't observe loads of shit that's going on. And also they're getting information from a bubble, which is a propagandized American tech, you know, platforms. So they have very limited ability to really see the world in a wide scope, outside of being American incentivized to monetize or uphold some sort of political agenda. So to choose 30 people at MIT to say these people are going to save the world, I want a balanced list. I want 5 people thinking about water, 5 people thinking about energy, 5 people thinking about food, 5 people thinking about health, or, you know, like, and 5 people thinking about space. Like, I'm not saying that it should be ruled out. What I'm saying is that the education institution needs to become a balanced place, because every parent now, I can guarantee you, wants their kid to get into tech or science or space, you know, well, because that's the time we're living through.
I don't think so, I do think there's an issue with decoupling tech from those things, though. Like I actually think that's sort of the heart of the issue, is that, like, technology can solve most of these problems, but because the early days of Silicon Valley just fucked up so bad, like it's like the things that like drove its name were so profit driven, and like have impacted our society so negatively. Like that concept of Facebook is just like this demonic concept that we're sort of driving people away and driving like we're causing people to think that like building technologies isn't what is going to solve these problems, when in fact building technologies is what is going to solve these problems. Like lab grown meat solves the problem, the massive environmental problem and animal suffering and like all the things that like the meat industry does that is bad, and like the methane production, like, you know, and it's like, I think what we need to do is like, we've pitted the arts and humanities against the sciences and like engineering, and I think that is like a really weird toxic thing. I think we need to like, I don't know, enable more nuance so that we can like not create symbolic demons in our culture and like decide that like an entire sector of things is inherently evil when there is a lot of wisdom and like potential in those sectors. And we're like, our like tribal infighting is making it so people feel like they cannot be accepted in those sectors, or they can't go into that thing. And I think that that's like a toxicity that is like super dangerous. And like I really think
I say it in terms of, say you've got all these like you know, Indian kids that aspire to come to colleges and study all of these things, and it's not really an attack on tech. Like I heard this girl in Jaffna in Sri Lanka, where she's an Elam Tamil who comes from the same town as me. Apparently she discovered how to turn seawater into fresh water, right? Which is something that would be like, it would totally save the world. I would think this girl needs to be on the front cover of Time magazine, and all the money from Google should be thrown at her, you know, but, or whoever, like it should just be 100% supported, but it's just not. I never heard of it again. You know, I read a small article in a newspaper and then never heard of it again. And then I'm like, that's just crazy to me. And
this is what I keep feeling, is like, this is what I keep saying, and like no one ever listens to me, is we have the freaking solutions and we're just not using them. Like LA is just too corrupt to put in a desalination plant, because it would cost, because like politicians don't want to like spend however many billions of dollars it would take to put a desalination plant and just provide LA with clean water. They just don't want to do it because they don't want to like do anything controversial, and it would take more years to build than their term. So like everyone's disincentivized when there's all these super easy solutions and all these really smart people all over the world coming up with them. Like we know what to do, we just aren't doing it, and it's so frustrating, and I can't figure out why. Sorry, I'm getting like sort of like heated. I feel like paper magazine is like, what, how the fuck are they going to print this? But anyway, yeah, like that specifically.
Well, maybe you got to get some money off Elon.
I mean, I think
do it yourself.
I don't want to.
I'll design your posters.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually down if that's something you want to focus on, because I'm in the process of I'm probably going to put out one more album, and then I'm going to like try to do things that are more helpful to people, I think. So
I really want
we can sidebar.
I can't wait for this album to come out and actually go and do that. Like there is a part of me that just wants to keep going straight and just drive through Mexico, you know, through South America, and be like, okay, just really just take in actually what's happening and what people need, and just do it instead of saying it, you know.
Yes, and that's kind of. I think
my thing is going to be affordable housing. I want to dedicate my life to that for the next definitely like 5-10 years if I can.
Yo, dude, I'm literally working on a housing bill in Austin right now. Like, do you want a sidebar after this? Because that's literally what I'm working on too. Like,
yeah, let's definitely talk about this.
Maybe I can get your number or something. But
you have my number.
I do.
You have my number, but I don't see. I have 2 numbers, and I think anyway, I get your number.
Yeah, we can send you from this. We'll connect you both sides, so you can change the world. I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. You know, one of the things I wanted to go into is Matangi also stood for cleaning up pollution. Like, she's a goddess of, funny enough, on Wikipedia it says she's a goddess of pollution, but it's kind of pollution of sound, and that's why she lives in the ghettos, because she's able to notice pollution more, and so she can help clean it. And so she's like a goddess who's not like floating in the clouds, but she lives in the trashiest places. And so I was like, oh, I should go to India and get into the whole like waste disposal thing, you know, because that would be a very useful thing to do instead of making music. But I feel like, yeah, we can throw little, you know, just make music for fun and actually get into proper things. And I think affordable housing is making eco-y affordable housing is like the thing.
It's all regulation. There's too much regulation on like eco prefabs. There's too much regulation on like, you know, smaller lots so that people can like build more. And then the other thing is like,
and the thing you were talking
like,
about Texas, yeah, the thing you were saying about Texas, it's insane in California. Like,
yeah.
How did that even happen? How did they get away with that?
No, it's crazy. And it's crazy because it's worse in more liberal places. Because there's like, I think there's sort of like this, I mean, we're starting to get, I don't want to, I'm going to cancel myself as I do all the time, but like, it's like this faux misplaced environmentalism that leads to this over-regulation, when it's like, that's not the actual environmental issue. Like, that's not like what actually needs to be, like, we don't need more sparse living. In fact, like, denser living is more environmentally friendly. Like, people use less cars, people walk more. Like, you know, I feel like there's like, people are like doing what like intuitively feels correct, like this is the environmental thing, but in fact it's actually sort of like harming people, making the world more expensive, and it like it's environmentally worse. But yeah, I don't know, there's also like, it's so hard to make rooftop gardens. People aren't educated in gardening. Like, when you talk about generational knowledge, we've like lost the knowledge of how to
Well, this
garden.
is what's really weird about being an artist, you know, that's still around, is that I lived for the first 10 years of my life with no shoes on, walking on dirt and picking fruit off a tree and eating off a leaf, and was raised like that, you know, like our bags at the local store was made of your yesterday's newspaper, you know, like just like getting chips in London. When you went to get fish and chips, it used to be wrapped in yesterday's newspaper. No plastic bags, you know.
Yeah.
And 10 years, I saw how Tamil people lived, you know, which is very like environmentally friendly, I'd say. Apart from concrete, which is something you had to really work at to get a bag of concrete to add to your home, you know, most of it was like biodegradable stuff. And then you are still alive in a period where it just kind of is gone so far one way, and then now we've like tried to sort of stop and reverse the process. But at the same time, yeah, I was in LA and I thought, you know what, instead of rent, like rent price is insane even for me, and I keep complaining about that. And I live the most minimal, stripped down lifestyle for an artist ever. Like, I still have one suitcase that I came with a year ago, and I'm still putting out a record and still wearing the same clothes out of this one suitcase, just so that I'm not over consuming and overdoing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm still an artist, and I feel like, okay, that part of want, I can let it go. But what I would like to do, and where I'd like to spend the money or the time, is to maybe get an environmental sort of design of a place, you know, whether it's a prefab or whatever the thing is, and to be able to just put it on a bit of land in LA. And you can't do that.
No,
like,
it's crazy.
impossible just to even get like a, 30-foot by 30-foot thing on a piece of ground and just sit in it. They make it absolutely impossible.
If you want to actually work on this, I have like a lot of thoughts about this, and my friend who does a lot of like legislation and stuff is like very far down the path of like getting this done. Well, actually, I shouldn't say too much because I really don't want it to get like fucked outside of, because you kind of have to.
I would definitely talk about it because I want to, because I know that Kanye is also like was getting into this, trying to build little houses, and then his also got shut down, right?
Yeah, I didn't see that, but that's yeah.
And then I read, that's like, what is that? So you're saying that's regulations, and
it's regulation. There's lots of lot size regulation, and then there's environmental regulation, safety regulation, but a lot of it comes down to like it's like this sneaky thing. It's called NIMBYism, not in my backyard, where it's like all the areas with these large lots, like if you want to change your house, or if you want to make your big lot into 2 lots to like support more families, you have to get permission from like all your neighbors, and it's like all this crazy paperwork and all this time, and it's like also for every month that like a construction is in development, it costs way more. And so like what this ends up doing is it's impossible to create affordable housing, because it's like, by definition, affordable housing is not that expensive. There's not a lot of money in that system, and then it's just like you're waiting 2-3 years of regulatory process probably to even get denied, and so it's like a really big problem. It's really bad in LA, it's really bad in San Francisco, it's really bad in Austin, and it's kind of like spreading through the US, because another thing that's happening is there's these like development corporations that are just buying up all the housing. So it's like you're not competing against a bunch of random people. You're not even competing against like the rich guy who has 3 houses, although you kind of are. And I do think that's problematic in itself. But there's also these just mega
corporations. Yeah, I know.
Buying like 10,000 houses in LA or something, and just like driving the prices up so bad. And it's just like, I feel like it's one of these.
Yeah, the fact that that's not regulated is insane to me.
Insane. It's like
how did that get through? If we were all living through the best years, the last 10 years, and had like the best, like the politicians. Because it's
coming back to lobbying. It's come back to fucking lobbying, dude. Like, it's like this, people pass, all these laws get passed and we don't even know about them and they're so boring that like the press doesn't write about them, because it is fucking boring. Like, I don't want to have to read about this stupid shit. It's so boring. It like makes me want to die. But it's just like, that's the problem, is like the banality of evil. Like, this shit just slides through because no one is watching, and like politicians are just getting paid to like put this shit into law and codify it into law, and then like we have to just deal with it, and then you have to like change laws in order to fix it, and changing laws is really freaking hard. And like, I know, I feel like this is making me sound like a libertarian. I'm not a libertarian, but like I just like think our society is getting crushed under the weight of a legal system that is like archaic and ancient and not adapting. And like,
I feel like I'm illegal in an illegal system. I do feel that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be legal in an illegal system, and that's like quite an impossible.
Hey guys, just branching a little bit. I know like we have spoken a lot about, Matangi and how the goddess kind of inspired the way that album title sort of interacted with these concepts that we're talking about. I'm wondering, branching off M.I.A, you were talking about sort of your childhood and reflecting upon that with regards to also like your children's future, how that relates in given that the title of your album was going to be your son's name, and now it's Mata, mother in many languages.
Well, I chose Mata because I feel like also it is about the concept of something needing to die, and that's like what this whole conversation is about. Like, certain things in, like, Jesus was the ultimate martyr and he died for all our sins, but in the meaning of Matangi, it means thought. It's like when you say a syllable with your tongue, the transformation from your brain signal to uttering a word that is called MATA. And I think it just fit at the moment for me, because I don't know, I just feel like we are living through a time where there's so much, there's so much, even just taking USA, it's like a period of struggle, where there's like fights between opinions and ideas, and people being divisive and divided, and then when you've just had the latest controversy with Kanye wearing a White Lives Matter, and the word matter in these sense is, it could be everything, I think it really, and also I am a mother and I'm in America, and it was very difficult for me to come to the USA after the COVID period, because I'd much rather be in a jungle, but I'm in the concrete jungle in LA, or in the desert. And for me, it was difficult, but I had to do something. That was the compromise that I had to make for my son, to be spend time with his dad. And also, we have very extreme ideas about education, and this is just the phase I'm going through. And, in some things you do have to compromise as a mum.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we're all in it together, thinking about the concept of Mother Nature, and what that means. And I don't know, I think it just sums it up. And it wasn't like, oh, this is a peaceful, happy, like, rah, kind of album. It's not. It was like very, very about the struggle. The whole thing is very, it's not really struggle with the world, but it's like struggle with yourself, of like changing and adapting and remembering who you are, but okay to let things go and change, and just also becoming part of a larger community, so you're not acting as an individual. That I think is really important, that you just have to play a role in a larger situation that's happening, and it's not necessarily all about you.
I feel like
you just,
I was gonna say, I feel like motherhood really drives that point home in like such a profound way. And like I feel like especially in this digital culture, like I think you're a bit older than me, but I like don't really remember not living in a digital culture. Like I remember like learning how to type on a computer and stuff, like as I was learning how to read and stuff. And like I feel like the digitalness really separates us, because even though we think we're socializing, like you think you're socializing on social media, you're not actually having an in-person socialization. Like your body isn't releasing like oxytocin and like nice hormones to make you calm because you had a nice social experience, but we think we are. And then like when you have a kid, like I don't know, there's all these things like you were talking earlier about, food, like how we can just get all our food delivered. It's like you can kind of shortcut almost every aspect of life right now, but you just can't shortcut motherhood. And I feel like there's this profound sense of compromise and community that arises from it, even just in the sense that you're like, compromising with the father, compromising with the kid, compromising your sleep for the kid's needs, compromising where you live because of what the kid, and like you really get the sense of purpose. And it's like you want to do those things, you know what I mean? It's like, even though it's like the worst thing for you, you like also profoundly want to do it because you care so much about another life form, that it's like, I don't want to say ego death, because I feel like people dehumanize mothers so much and like act like mothers have no personality. And like I think the way our culture talks about motherhood and like views motherhood is so toxic. But like I don't know, sometimes I feel like I've noticed recently I'm gravitating socially to primarily other like women who have kids, which is so different from how I used to be, because I feel like they not only grasp like a sense of savagery about reality that everyone is kind of not really like, there's a medievalism and like a primalism to like having kids that like I feel like everyone is kind of losing, but there's also this like caring about the world that I like. I don't know, like I just feel like all the moms I know are like really like profoundly care about society in a way. Like it like forces you to be an optimist, and it forces you to be a humanist. Like
it's true, because you got no choice.
Yeah, you have no choice.
You have no choice.
Yeah.
Wow, we can talk for ages.
Yeah, I actually do. My kid is kind of sick, so I do have to go soon. But it would be really sick to talk like some other. I don't know. Like I don't have your contact information, but I'd love to get it if that's allowed or whatever. I don't.
Okay,
like,
I get it off Sam tonight. I'm going to see Sam Kirby tonight, so I get it off her again and give you a call. Okay. So I hope your kid gets better.
Your own podcast.
And
listen to you both all day long. Sorry, I had to say that you guys are amazing.
Yeah, this is brilliant.
Well, it's just like all these years of stuff we wanted to talk about that was pent up, and it's just like so much going on.
No one ever lets you talk about this shit.
No, it's so to hear, and it's so important to hear. And there's smart people out there that will read this and will connect. And you know, more power to you both for speaking up about this stuff.
Maybe paper can outsource it to a different place as well, to just put it on a board somewhere, and because all the kids that are into fashion are going to be really bored. But
hey, this kid's really into fashion, and I have not been bored 1 second, even though I've been silent.
I feel like we shouldn't underestimate people. I feel like we have bad content because everyone underestimates people. But like when you see how popular Game of Thrones is, I'm like, people can really handle like very complex things, like more than we think, I think.
It all plays into the dumbing down.
That's what I find when I meet people, you know, but it's like when you read it through social media, it's always put through like the spaghetti machine of just like, I don't know, just randomness that, you know?
Yeah. I think it's hard to read. In the video world, it's really hard to, like, I think it's really hard to read right now in general. I think everyone's attention span for the written word is low. Like, if we thought about this earlier, I would have suggested like recording it and just putting it in a podcast or something, like on YouTube or something. But
I think, Alex, did you record that?
Yeah, we've got the audio. I have the audio recorded.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
I feel like that's a good idea.
Put it on my website. I would love to put it on my website.
Yeah, I think you should. I feel like a lot of people, it's much easier to have audio on like when you're driving or doing something. Like I think it's much easier to consume long form stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
We have the audio, and if there's any sort of bits that you know, there are some things about policy that you want to be careful of not revealing, so just send those notes through. But yeah, we have the audio.
I think I stopped myself before I was like, I'm just not going to go into more detail because I don't want to, like, I have to ask my friend who's actually writing the bill what's appropriate.
This was more of a philosophical conversation, which is fine. You know, we're allowed to talk about these kind of things. I really don't care at this point about being cancelled.
I don't care about being. Yeah, I don't give.
And you threw a snowball at the Queen, so you can't talk.
I did not throw that snowball, but yeah, I've been blamed for it every step of the way, so I'll just take it. But anyway.
All right. Well, have a nice day, and it was great talking to you. I really enjoyed that.
It was so great.
Get your info so you're both in touch and you can sidebar.
Yeah.
All right.
And I just want to say I've been a fan like forever, and you're like a huge influence on me. So thank you so much for asking me to do this. It means a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been a really huge fan too. At one point, we were going to have the same management a long time ago, but they were in Canada, so it didn't work out.
I think a few times actually, because I think I went to Rock Nation right as you were leaving, but. Yeah.
I don't, another day.
Another
but convo.
That's maybe too spicy, but cool.
All right, let's talk later. Bye.
Bye.
Brilliant. Thank you guys.
See you guys. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Have a good evening. Take care.